Have you ever had the unsettling feeling that the person you used to be is quietly disappearing, yet the person you are becoming has not fully arrived? It feels as though you are standing between two worlds. The life that once made sense begins to feel strangely distant, while the future remains hidden behind a veil you cannot lift. To everyone around you, nothing appears to have changed. You go to work, answer messages, fulfill responsibilities, smile when expected, and carry on with ordinary routines. But deep inside, something has shifted. The questions that once seemed unimportant now refuse to leave your mind. You begin wondering why certain experiences keep repeating, why familiar relationships suddenly feel empty, and why success, comfort, or recognition no longer satisfy a longing you cannot even describe. Most people mistake this feeling for confusion, burnout, or unhappiness. They rush to silence it with distractions, believing something has gone wrong. But there are moments in life when confusion is not a symptom of losing yourself. It is evidence that an older version of yourself is no longer capable of containing the person you are meant to become. There is an ancient symbol found across civilizations that represents wisdom not as accumulated knowledge, but as a living force that awakens within the human soul. It is not the wisdom that fills libraries or wins arguments. It is the wisdom that transforms perception itself. It changes how you see suffering, how you understand love, how you relate to fear, and how you recognize your place within existence. Entering this phase does not make life easier. In many ways, it makes life more demanding because illusions begin to lose their power. The things that once entertained you no longer satisfy. The masks you once wore begin to feel unbearably heavy. You cannot unknow what you have started to see. The first sign rarely arrives with dramatic revelations. It begins with a quiet discomfort. You discover that the life you worked so hard to build no longer reflects who you are becoming. Achievements that once filled you with excitement now leave an unexpected emptiness. Conversations become repetitive. Goals that once seemed urgent begin to feel strangely insignificant. At first, this frightens you because you assume you are becoming ungrateful. Yet gratitude is not the issue. The issue is that your soul has outgrown the room your identity has been living in. Growth often feels like loss because something familiar must disappear before something greater can emerge. A child leaving home experiences both excitement and grief. The old world must be released before a larger one can be entered. The same is true within us. Every awakening demands the death of an outdated identity, and identity does not surrender peacefully. It fights to survive by convincing you to return to comfort. Even when comfort has become a prison, many people spend their entire lives decorating prisons instead of walking through the open door. They improve the appearance of lives that no longer belong to them because uncertainty feels more frightening than stagnation. Yet deep transformation always begins with the courage to admit that what once fulfilled you no longer does. The second sign appears in your relationships. You begin noticing that some connections are held together not by love, but by habit. Certain conversations leave you feeling exhausted rather than inspired. You realize you have spent years becoming who others expected instead of discovering who you actually are. This realization is painful because it forces you to ask uncomfortable questions. Have you been seeking approval instead of truth? Have you confused being accepted with being understood? Not everyone who enters your life is meant to accompany you into your next chapter. Some people are companions for particular seasons. Their purpose was never permanence. When your inner world changes, your relationships inevitably reorganize themselves. This is not punishment, it is alignment. You may notice that old friendships slowly fade without dramatic conflict. There is simply less to discuss. The conversations revolve around the past while your attention keeps drifting toward questions about meaning, purpose, and authenticity. Others may accuse you of changing. They are correct. Change is precisely what is happening. The mistake is believing change is betrayal. There comes a moment when remaining loyal to an outdated version of yourself becomes the greatest betrayal of all. The third sign is perhaps the most misunderstood. You begin developing a profound respect for solitude, not loneliness. Solitude. These are not the same. Loneliness is the pain of feeling disconnected. Solitude is the peace that emerges when you finally become comfortable in your own presence. Modern life trains us to fear silence. Every empty moment is filled with notifications, entertainment, or endless noise. We are taught that constant stimulation is evidence of a meaningful life. Yet wisdom rarely shouts, it whispers, and whispers cannot be heard in crowded minds. When you begin entering this deeper phase of awareness, silence no longer feels empty, it becomes alive. You start noticing thoughts you had previously ignored. You observe patterns in your reactions. You become curious about your fears instead of simply obeying them. You realize that much of your suffering has not been created by circumstances, but by unconscious habits of perception. This is where genuine freedom begins. Not when the world changes, but when your relationship with the world changes. You stop asking why difficult things happen to you and begin asking what they are revealing within you. This single question transforms every challenge into a teacher. Suddenly, disappointment becomes information, failure becomes instruction, conflict becomes a mirror. Every experience begins carrying symbolic meaning rather than random cruelty. People who have not entered this stage often believe life is happening against them. Those who have begun awakening gradually recognize that life is also happening for them, shaping them through experiences they would never have chosen consciously. The fourth sign emerges in unexpected ways. Your intuition becomes impossible to ignore. Perhaps you cannot explain why certain opportunities no longer feel right, even when they appear perfect on paper. Perhaps you sense danger before evidence appears. Perhaps you feel drawn toward people, books, places, or ideas without understanding why. Logic may argue one direction, while something deeper gently guides you toward another. Many dismiss intuition because it refuses to provide proof. Yet some of the most important decisions in life cannot be made by calculation alone. Love cannot be measured by statistics. Purpose cannot be discovered through comparison. Meaning cannot be purchased through achievement. There exists a form of intelligence older than language itself. It notices subtle patterns long before conscious thought assembles them into conclusions. It recognizes truth through resonance rather than argument. This inner knowing is not irrational. It simply operates differently from ordinary reasoning. The more honestly you live, the clearer this inner guidance becomes. Every lie weakens it. Every act of courage strengthens it. Every compromise clouds it, while every moment of authenticity sharpens it. This is why awakening is never merely about learning something new. It is about removing everything that prevents you from recognizing what has always been quietly waiting within you. At first, trusting this inner voice feels terrifying because it often leads away from certainty. It asks you to release familiar identities, predictable routines, and inherited beliefs that no longer fit the person you are becoming. It rarely promises comfort. Instead, it promises aliveness. And perhaps that is the greatest difference between existing and truly living. One seeks safety above all else. The other seeks truth, even when truth changes everything. If these signs have begun appearing in your own life, do not rush to escape them. The discomfort you feel may not be the beginning of your collapse. It may be the first evidence that something ancient, quiet, and profoundly wise has begun awakening within you. A wisdom that asks for nothing less than your complete honesty and promises nothing less than a completely transformed way of seeing yourself, your life, and the world around you. And so, if you recognize these signs within yourself, do not rush to label them as confusion, crisis, or uncertainty. Some of the most profound transformations begin disguised as endings. What feels like the collapse of your old life may, in truth, be the quiet birth of a consciousness that can no longer be satisfied by illusion. Remember this. Awakening is not about becoming someone else. It is about remembering the person you were before fear taught you to hide, before approval became more important than authenticity, before the noise of the world drowned out the wisdom that had always lived within you. The rarest awakening is not reserved for the gifted, the enlightened, or the extraordinary. It belongs to anyone willing to face themselves with complete honesty. It belongs to those who have the courage to question inherited beliefs, to embrace uncertainty without demanding immediate answers, and to remain open when life refuses to follow the plans they once believed were essential. You may never receive undeniable proof that you have entered this new phase. There may be no dramatic moment when the heavens open or the universe announces that you have arrived. More often, you will simply notice that you are no longer the person who needed those confirmations in the first place. One day, the things that once disturbed your peace will no longer control your mind. The opinions that once defined your worth will lose their authority. The fears that once dictated your choices will become quiet reminders of how far you have come. And without realizing it, you will begin living from a place that once seemed impossible. A place where your actions are guided not by insecurity but by understanding. Not by comparison but by purpose. Not by the desperate need to become someone important, but by the quiet joy of becoming fully yourself. Never underestimate the power of this transformation. A single awakened mind can influence generations. A parent who heals their own wounds prevents those wounds from becoming an inheritance. A friend who chooses honesty over pretense gives others permission to remove their masks. A leader who acts from wisdom instead of ego creates change that no amount of force could ever achieve. This is why your inner work is never only about you. Every moment you choose awareness over impulse, compassion over resentment, truth over comfort, you contribute something invisible yet immeasurably valuable to the world around you. Perhaps that is the greatest secret of all. The wisdom you seek has never been somewhere beyond the horizon. It has never been hidden in distant mountains, ancient mysteries, or unreachable ideals. It has been patiently waiting beneath every fear you were willing to face, beneath every hardship you survived, beneath every question that refused to leave your heart. The journey was never about finding wisdom. It was about removing everything that prevented you from recognizing it. So, as you leave this moment behind, carry these signs with you, not as a checklist to prove your awakening, but as gentle reminders to keep paying attention. Pay attention to the quiet voice that speaks when the world grows silent. Pay attention to the discomfort that asks you to outgrow an old identity. Pay attention to the relationships that nourish your soul and the ones that ask you to abandon yourself. Pay attention to the fears that reveal where courage is waiting to be born. Pay attention to the moments of stillness, because they often contain answers that noise can never provide. Above all, pay attention to the person you are becoming, because the greatest miracle is not that life changes around you. The greatest miracle is that your way of seeing life changes so completely that the same world begins to reveal an entirely different meaning. And perhaps, years from now, you will look back on this season, the uncertainty, the solitude, the unanswered questions, the invisible battles, and realize they were never signs that you were falling apart. They were the unmistakable signs that you were awakening, not into a life without struggle, not into a life without loss, but into a life where every experience, whether joyful or painful, became part of a deeper wisdom that no one could ever take away. Walk forward with patience, walk forward with humility, walk forward with the quiet confidence that true wisdom does not demand perfection. It asks only for presence, sincerity, and the courage to continue becoming. Because those who answer that call discover something the world can never give and can never take away, a mind that